Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Shang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyalche Lankara Dargan Santo, Sherman, Tumba Tuche Chan La Ki Shom Sar, Nishan Roar Zer Nishan Kamsa, Jawar Tuji Shan Yelaman, Jime Panzo Jala, Soran. Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Now we continue to discuss the analysis of the 7 elements in the Shurangama Sutra. Previously we covered earth, water, fire and wind, these 5 great elements, earth, water, fire, wind and space. Then on top of these we add the element of consciousness and the element of perception, making 7 elements in total. Now we are analyzing these. Among these, yesterday we already completed the earth element, the fire element has been completed, and the water element has also been completed. In today's class we will analyze the wind element and the space element, these 2 elements. How exactly do we analyze them? Let us continue to look at the original text. The Buddha tells Ananda, the nature of wind has no substance. Its movement and stillness are impermanent. Here, for each element, there is an affirmation or confirmation of its essential nature. What is the fundamental nature of wind? Actually, it's the same as before. It also has no true body, no true essential nature. Moreover, with wind, its movement and stillness are actually impermanent. We all know this. No matter where we are, it seems when there's no wind, suddenly the wind starts blowing again. When a strong wind is blowing, it suddenly becomes calm again. So regarding wind's essential nature, it has no truly substantial, endurable nature that can withstand analysis. Moreover, wind's fundamental nature is such that both movement and stillness are impermanent. Next, the Buddha specifically gives Ananda a case example to illustrate how we should understand the wind element. Indeed, after we study the Shurangama Sutra, we should be able to understand many methods of logical reasoning. Additionally, for each topic, whether the 12 sense bases, the 6 entrances, or the 5 aggregates, the Buddha's method of analyzing each aggregate is different. Each analytical approach has its own unique characteristics. Previously, we have also seen in the Madhyama Agama and Samyukta Agama, including in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, they all follow one standard pattern, analyze one aspect first, then say sound, smell, taste, and so forth are also like this, extending it that way. But the Shurangama Sutra is different. The Shurangama Sutra approaches each question from a different analytical angle. This point, I think many of us understand, and the Shurangama Sutra is entirely based on logical analysis. It's not merely words, it must be observed with our wisdom. This is somewhat different from other sutras. So next, the Buddha tells Ananda, using examples from his own body, including analogies with his monastic robes, to illustrate. You regularly arrange your robes when entering the great assembly. When the corner of your samgat moves and touches someone nearby, there will be a gentle breeze that brushes against that person's face. Here he says, Ananda, you regularly arrange your clothing and then enter among the great assembly, among the monastic community. It was like this when the Buddha was alive, and it's the same for us now. Generally speaking, as monastics, for instance, when you attend a Dharma gathering, go to chant or attend teachings, at these times you should arrange your clothing properly beforehand, because if you yourself are not proper, others may develop wrong views and slander you, leading to many faults. Worldly people are the same way. Worldly people, when working, whether they wear traditional Chinese clothing or Western suits, they need to arrange their clothing properly. This should be the case. Now, our monastic community's overall approach to dress should mostly be very good. There has been progress these past few years, including our lay practitioners. Lay people should look like lay people. If it's neither here nor there, that's not so good. Some time ago, I also mentioned that some people appear to be monastics but aren't really monastics. They have hair on their head. If they're not monastics, Yet they're wearing all monastic robes. This is unreasonable. I hope everyone in the future, you see here that Ananda also, the Buddha says when you enter the monastic community, you first arrange your robes. So at this time, in the process of arranging your robes, you're samgata. Samgata is a general term for the kasaya. Actually, there are 3 robes, and among the 3 robes are, for example, the great robe, the 5-strip robe, and the 7-strip robe. Generally speaking, the Buddha's robes in the past, we can collectively call them kasaya. In the beginning, when the Buddha had not yet established the precepts, these 3 robes also did not exist. But later, it seems in India during winter, seeing that many bhiksus, when they received different cloths from external donors, some put them on their heads, some around their necks, some tied them around their waists. Later, the Buddha felt this was not orderly, so initially he allowed 1 garment. Later, it seems India was also quite cold in winter, so the 3 robes were established. Now we may include our outer robes, such as the 5-strip robe and great robe. These are all proper, but generally the outer shawl is not found in the Vinaya. The great Vinaya masters of Tibet later also established these, including some garments worn by Han Chinese monastics. These are truly not found in the Vinaya Pitaka. There are such cases, but regardless, what later precept holders established is also proper and reasonable. So here he explains, Ananda, when you enter the monastic community, in the process of arranging your robes, the corner of your kasaya, that is, for example, when we put on our outer shawl, that corner of the robe moves and touches others. It may brush against someone else. So at this time, because of your robe's movement, as you put on your kasaya, a gentle breeze brushes against another person's face. For instance, if there's a monastic beside you and you begin arranging your robes, then accidentally, when you put on your robe, the gentle breeze carried by the robe's corner blows onto the other person's face. So at this point he analyzes, does this wind arise from the corner of the kasaya? Does it originate from empty space? Or is it generated from that person's face? Just like before, he examines 3 aspects. This gentle wind that appears, where exactly does it come from? Does it come from within the corner of the kasaya, or does it come from empty space? Or does it come from, didn't it just blow against another person's face? Does it come from that person's face? Then the Buddha now analyzes each of these 3 issues. It seems many are analyzed from 3 perspectives, but the analytical angles are indeed completely different. So the Buddha tells Ananda, if this wind comes from the corner of the kasaya, if you say this wind comes from the corner of the kasaya, then you would be wearing wind and your robe would billow and fly away from your body. If the wind comes from the corner of the kasaya, then wouldn't the kasaya contain wind? If the kasaya contains wind, then the kasaya has already become wind. In that case, you would already be wearing wind, not a kasaya, because the source of this wind is the kasaya. If it comes from the corner of the kasaya, then aren't you saying this wind originates from the kasaya? In that case, you would already be wearing wind. If you're wearing wind because you're wearing wind, other clothing would definitely be blown away. They would billow and fly because you have wind on your body. Any other clothing you try to put on would be blown away by the wind. There would be no way. In that case, this clothing would definitely separate from your body. It would be impossible for you, Ananda, if you say wind comes from the kasaya, then you would be wearing wind. If you're wearing wind, you couldn't wear clothing. In that case, Ananda, or anyone else in this situation, would possibly have no clothing on their body. Without clothing, they would already be naked because they're wearing this wind on their body. Wearing wind, their clothing would be blown away. This would lead to this fault, but actually it's not like this. The Buddha says, I am now teaching the Dharma, sitting clothed in this assembly. Look at my robe. Where is the wind? I am now in the midst of the great assembly wearing robes, with robes hanging down, with Dharma robes hanging down, teaching everyone. But in the process of teaching, you, Ananda, and the rest of you can look at my robes. My robes are actually not wind. Where is the wind? It's not anywhere. I'm just wearing a kasaya, not wearing wind. This is what you can see with your own eyes. How could it be, if I were truly wearing wind, that I, the Buddha, would also have no clothing on my body. But actually, it's not like this. I still have clothing on my body. There should not be any place in the robe where wind is stored. Besides this, it's impossible that my robes contain hidden wind that, when necessary, comes out to blow on someone's face. That's also impossible. So you have no reasonable grounds to say that wind comes from my robe's corner or my kasaya, because it is not wind. If it's not wind, how could it bring wind? When we observe, it's impossible for there to be any place in my robes where wind is stored. Since there isn't, then your claim that the wind that just blew on someone's face comes from the kasaya is groundless. It has no basis whatsoever. This is the first aspect of analysis. Then the second aspect, if it arises from empty space. Didn't we just examine three aspects? If you say the wind that blows on someone's face actually arises from empty space, when your robe is motionless, why is there no breeze? In that case, because wind arises from empty space when your robe is not moving. Because when the robe is not moving, the person beside you is still in the midst of space. So why doesn't it blow on that person's face? Because just now it was only after your robe moved that we also know this. When someone puts on their robe like this, the face often feels this gentle breeze touching it. In that case, if it comes from within empty space, when your robe is not moving, why wouldn't wind appear? Why wouldn't it appear and blow on his face? This is also unreasonable. Space is permanent in nature. Wind should constantly arise. Moreover, this space is actually an unconditioned phenomenon. It is permanent. If it is permanent and it is produced from within space, if it's produced from space, it can be said to be a producer. Depending on it, things can be produced. In that case, wind should be produced continuously because space is continuously present. If space is continuously present, then wind should be present continuously. For example, in our Dharma hall, the empty space in the middle is always there. It's there whether we're present or not. In that case, in our Dharma hall, wind should be blowing every day, whether there are robes or no robes. This doesn't matter. Opening windows or not opening windows doesn't matter because there's empty space here. It should always be present. As long as there's a producer, the produced can exist. Some commentaries use producer and produce to explain this. If you say there's no wind, if there's no wind, then empty space has already been destroyed because just now we said wind is produced from empty space. In that case, do they have a dependent relationship? When there's no wind, empty space has already been destroyed. Space should, because just now between these two there was a producer-produced relationship. In a producer-produced relationship, if the produced wind doesn't exist, then the producing empty space, because they are established dependently, if the so-called sun doesn't exist, then the establishment of fatherhood, the dependence, also cannot exist. Therefore, empty space should be completely destroyed. The cessation of wind can be observed. What would the cessation of space look like? In our common understanding, the cessation of wind is possible. Calm wind and still waves, as if the wind has completely stopped. We often use this expression. But if you say empty space has been destroyed, what kind of state would this be? If you say these two truly have this kind of relationship, then you can say wind has ceased. This can be said. We can all perceive it. But how does empty space cease? This is difficult to explain. If there is a rising and ceasing, furthermore, if there is a rising and ceasing, then it's definitely not empty space. Empty space is an unconditioned phenomenon without arising and ceasing. Having no arising and no ceasing is what makes it empty space. So if empty space has arising and ceasing, then it wouldn't be empty space. Named as empty space, how could wind emerge? If it is truly empty, empty space is empty, and how could wind come out? Empty space is something that contains nothing. That's why it's called an unobstructed phenomenon, called empty space. In that case, from something that contains nothing, how could wind be produced? So the second observation we just made, that wind is produced from empty space, this explanation also has no basis. Then the third, if wind comes from the face of the person who was blown by the wind, if it comes from his face, that's also unreasonable. Why? If it arises from that person's face, it should blow toward you. Ananda, you should analyze. If wind comes from within his face, then it should blow toward you. Because it's impossible for someone to blow from their own face onto their own face. If wind appears from his face, then the people around him, including you, Ananda, should also have it blow onto your face. The Tathagata's analysis is indeed such that sometimes, when analyzing any aspect, every aspect becomes a logical point. We might think this looks very simple, but actually this analysis is extremely subtle. If it comes from the face, then there would be this fault. Moreover, you yourself are arranging your robes. Since you arrange your robes, why does the wind blow in reverse? Moreover, if you yourself are arranging your robes, if it comes from another person's face, then how could it blow onto that person's face? Because you, Ananda, didn't we just say the wind comes from the face? If it comes from the face, on one hand, it should blow the wind onto your face. And also, when you're arranging your robes, why does this wind only blow onto the other person's face? This is also impossible. Because you yourself are arranging your robes, the wind comes from another person's face. From that person's face, it should either blow onto your face, but why does it come from his own face and instead blow back onto his own face? This also makes no sense, because you arrange your robes and the wind comes from his face. If it comes from his face, then why does it blow this wind back onto him? The wind direction would be problematic. This is definitely unreasonable. So observing from these three aspects, indeed when we observe this way, when we haven't examined it, wind hitting our face, some winds, for example, when opening a window, or when someone arranges their robes, it might blow directly onto you. But at this time, we've never observed it this way. Once we observe, indeed, this wind, how exactly does it come about? So here he says, observe this carefully and truthfully. The arranging of robes is yours. The face belongs to that person. Empty space is still and has never moved. From which direction does the wind stir and come here? So now, next, you should observe carefully and in detail. Actually, these are three aspects. Because you are arranging your robes, this is one aspect. The second aspect, the wind blows onto another person's face, and that person's face belongs to him. That person's face belongs to him. Moreover, space is still. It has no such movement. Its essence is always without arising or ceasing, never flowing, because the essence of empty space has never had any movement. In that case, from these three aspects, your robe is one, another person's face is one, and there's empty space. These three aspects are actually very difficult to merge together. In that case, where exactly does the wind come from? How does it blow onto another person's face? We can observe this. Actually, all things in the world are like this. If we truly observe with the Buddha's wisdom, many phenomena are like this. Below he says again, wind and space have different natures. They neither unite nor merge. It cannot be that wind's nature arises from nothing on its own. Wind and empty space, these two actually have separate natures. Because wind is moving while empty space is still. The natures of these two are completely separated by barriers. They cannot possibly be one essence. In that case, how could they arise through union? Didn't we say before that they arise through the union of causes and conditions? But for arising through the union of causes and conditions, the essence of wind and the essence of empty space are completely different natures. How could they unite and produce something? So our so-called union of causes and conditions is also very difficult. We speak of seeds and sprouts, but actually earth, water, fire, wind, and space, when these several five great elements unite as causes and conditions, they can produce things. That's how we speak of it. But when you truly examine it, not to mention the fire and water elements below, among these two elements, the space element and wind element, one is moving, one is not moving, one has a rise and ceasing, one has no arising and ceasing. How can these two unite and produce a cause and condition? How could it be like this? This is also very difficult. So the general reason why phenomena are not produced from causes and conditions is also like this. Didn't the Buddha always say before that phenomena are neither produced from causes and conditions nor naturally produced? Why are they not produced from causes and conditions? Actually, what was said before is that when unexamined, they are produced through illusory causes and conditions like dreams. If we truly examine, this also cannot be produced. It cannot be that wind's nature arises from nothing on its own. Is wind's nature produced naturally without any causes and conditions? It's also not like that. If produced naturally, there would be the faults of being permanently present or permanently absent. That definitely wouldn't work either, so it's not naturally produced. You completely fail to know that in the Tathagata Garbha, the nature of wind is true emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is true wind. Pure by nature, it pervades the entire Dharma realm. Here, for example, in commentaries like Shurangama Sutra Finger Palm Commentary, in these texts, after each section it says, "You still do not know, you completely fail to know." These phrases use different words, especially here. "You completely fail to know" means, Ananda, you're a bit slow, you still don't understand. It seems the Buddha's tone toward him is becoming increasingly stern, because each time it seems Ananda becomes increasingly confused in appearance. He says here, "You completely fail to know. In the Tathagata Garbha there is the nature of wind as true emptiness. In the Tathagata Garbha, wind's true nature is actually emptiness, and the nature of emptiness can actually produce wind here. These two can be said to be pure by nature, with emptiness as essence and luminosity as nature, pervading the entire Dharma realm. Although it pervades the entire Dharma realm, do we, for example, do the beings of the 10 realms understand this? Not necessarily. Above our 6 realms, there are also Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. Altogether, the beings of the 10 realms, according to the power of their own minds, what they receive is completely different. The wind before Pratyeka Buddhas and the wind before Bodhisattvas, the wind before ordinary people, the wind before beings of the 6 realms, all are different from each other, completely different. So according to beings' minds, to their capacity for knowledge, according to beings' minds, this wind is indeed different, including among those of us present. When the wind blows, our feelings are all different. When one's practice is a bit better, a cool breeze is blowing, so comfortable, the 3 jewels blessing. This must be the blessing of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Then when one's mood is bad, when one's practice is poor, look, today there are also strong winds. This is hell's wind or hungry ghost wind. It should be Asura wind. Now it's truly painful. This place is completely like a world of lower realms. There's no meaning to it. So, with the same gust of wind, each of us may experience happiness or suffering that is completely different. So, according to beings' minds, their capacity for knowledge is also completely different. The Buddha says, "Ananda, just as when you alone slightly move your robes, a gentle breeze arises." This is a very small example. For instance, you, Ananda, when you alone slightly move your Dharma robes, then gentle wind appears. Actually, this wind already pervades the Dharma realm and fills the worlds of entire lands. Actually, such wind exists everywhere. If Ananda does this, Ananda's gentle breeze can also blow on people nearby. We are also the same. If you take a Dharma robe like this, people nearby will also feel the wind, precisely because the nature of these 4 great elements in the Tathagata Garbha pervades all Dharma realms. Anywhere Ananda moves his robes, wind blows like this. Not only Ananda, every place we are now is also like this. Every place, whether we're in Africa or in our Asia, wherever we go, everywhere we go, there is wind. This shows that in such a Tathagata Garbha, the nature of the 4 great elements already pervades all worlds. Pervading the world, how could there be particular locations? It already pervades the entire world. How could it be that here it has pervaded, but there it hasn't pervaded? Could it be like this? Impossible. It pervades all worlds. It's just that it appears according to karma. Appearing according to karma, following your own karma, various different manifestations appear. Indeed, in some commentaries it says, among all powers, wind power is the greatest. Among all powers, wind's power is also extremely great, because wind is actually most important in both our external world and the world of sentient beings, is most important. If there were no wind, for instance, I couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't move. Regarding my body, I need wind all day long. My eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body all depend on wind for movement. If there were no movement, I would be completely still. There would be no way. The world is also the same. Everything, including spring, summer, autumn, and winter, hell beings, hungry ghosts and animals, the pure land and Shambhala lands, etc. In all pure and impure worlds, wind cannot be separated from them. Indeed, wind is extremely important. This appears due to beings' different karma. Before us as well, for example, in summer we have relatively little wind here, while in winter the wind is relatively strong. But this is generally speaking. It seems a couple days ago, Jiangsu province also had a tornado where thousands of people were affected by disaster. Indeed, wind sometimes brings us happiness, including some cool breezes. If in summer some cool breezes blow, we feel, wow, extremely comfortable. Feeling-wise, the happiness it brings, beings' karmic power is different. Sometimes when beings' collective karma manifests, it seems in 2018 when I went to Hong Kong, they said it was a Category 17 Mangkhut typhoon. All of Hong Kong was rendered unrecognizable. Everywhere, including the airport, all the windows were completely destroyed by wind in high-rise buildings on the 10th, 20th floors. Many windows were all blown out by the wind. Such phenomena occurred. When we rode in the car kept shaking like this, especially on that overpass. I thought surely the car would be blown down below by the wind. Very shaky. The driver said, don't be afraid, it's fine, don't be afraid. While driving he kept saying, don't worry, it's fine. But it looked like he himself was also being affected by that. So sometimes wind indeed brings disasters and also brings various kinds of happiness, including if we had no wind in this world, then many things would. Our bodies would also rot. Everyone knows wind's power is quite great. Actually, this kind of wind is everywhere, but it's just a matter of recognizing it or not. Worldly beings are ignorant. Worldly people are ignorant because they become confused, thinking it arises either from causes and conditions or from natural spontaneity. Actually, these are all mental discriminations and conceptual constructions. These are all our discriminating thoughts, deluded conjectures, not reality. Mere words and expressions are all without real meaning. As long as there are words, discrimination, and conceptual elaborations, actually this is not the truth. So the true nature of wind in the Tathagata Garbha is what we just discussed. Its true nature is empty. The nature of wind is true emptiness. The nature of emptiness is true wind. This is still very important. Also, didn't we just discuss, according to beings' minds, responding to their capacity for knowledge? This is also very important. And later there's one called appearing according to karma. Actually, if we can't memorize all the text of the Shurangama Sutra, individual terms within it still bring us great benefit. What we've discussed these past few days is quite ordinary, people who live every day blowing in the wind. But actually, we may be recognizing for the first time what wind is really like, what its nature is like, what it's like in the causes and conditions of manifestation, and how it is empty. When I was herding yaks in the past, I was in the wind every day. Sometimes when there were some tree groves, that was the best windbreaker. Then holding a small prayer wheel continuously. At that time, my body was also quite small, so I went right inside those trees, just like a little mountain goat. Hopped a bit, I'd come out of the tree hollow. Then once an inspection team, a work group came to check, and they thought these several hundred yaks had no herder, so they were preparing to give us penalty points. Later, just as they were about to leave, I came out from the grove. A leader named Manla said, "Is this a person or a little rabbit?" I was probably very small. I just came out from that grove and then went to herd those several hundred yaks. So sometimes wind is still quite meaningful. Next we discuss space. The Buddha says, Ananda, space has no form, it is revealed through material forms. The Buddha says space can likewise be analyzed. Actually, the nature of space has no physical form. Certainly, space has even less form. It's just that space can be discovered because it is revealed through material forms. For example, this material form is a square-shaped material object. The space inside it might be square-shaped. If this material form, for example, our Dharma hall is square-shaped, if it's square-shaped, then the space inside we can designate as square-shaped. If our building were circular, circular, then the space inside could be circular. It is designated according to the appearance of material forms. Below, he also gives an analogy. What kind of analogy? Like in the city of Śrāvastī, at a place far from the river, various Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Vaishyas, Shudras, along with Pulkasas and Kandalas, these caste people, establish new dwellings and dig wells seeking water. The meaning here is that in the city of Śrāvastī, and the city of Śrāvastī is in Shravaka country, by the river of Shravaka country, very, very far from the river, there are many, many people of the Kshatriya royal caste and also Brahmins. Regarding Brahmins, we discussed before the Brahmin caste. Actually, Brahmins in India are considered the most noble caste. They believe they themselves emerged from Brahma's mouth, so they are descendants of Brahma. Don't we often speak of Brahmin? Why are they called Brahmin? The Brahmins themselves believe they are the most noble caste. There are also Vaishyas. Vaishyas refers to what we've already encountered in the wish-fulfilling treasury, those mainly engaged in commerce. Then Shudras, regarding Shudras, the Shurangama Sutra finger palm commentary says they are farmers, mainly agricultural, perhaps merchants in agriculture. And Pulkasas, regarding Pulkasas, among them are those with certain skills and techniques. Noble people mainly engaged in crafts. They should be people with relatively sharp faculties. Then Kandalas, regarding Kandalas, they are the lowest caste among them, mainly engaged in the livelihood of killing. Their evil karma is their adornment. They consider evil karma to be their ornament. Very evil things. Among evils, mainly killing humans and killing other animals. Moreover, didn't some books mention at the time that regarding Kandalas, even up to now, Indian people still discriminate against them quite a bit? Moreover, they themselves, wherever they go, either hold a bell in their hand ringing ding dong to make others stay away from them because it's very taboo to encounter them, or they strike bamboo sticks making cha-cha-cha sounds like this. At such times, oh, people of the Kandala caste are coming, the low caste is coming, then people generally don't want to encounter them, such a caste. So it may be that at the time, outside the city of Śrāvastī, in a very distant place, people of various castes, they were digging wells for water and preparing to establish homes and livelihoods there. They prepared to live there. At this time, perhaps because they were quite far from the river, for this reason they began to construct water wells. They constructed wells and then sought water inside. This is one process. When seeking water in this way, when they remove 1 foot of soil, there will be 1 foot of empty space in the middle, and so on until they remove 1 jung of soil. In the middle, they still get 1 jung of empty space. People of various castes are all digging soil there. When digging soil, they're preparing to make wells. Now, making wells is very easy. There are machines that can directly dig dozens of meters deep very easily. In the past, it probably wasn't like this. Then they began removing soil. If they remove 1 foot of soil, then at this time 1 foot of empty space appears inside. A bit over 3 meters, 3.333, 1 foot of empty space appears. If they remove 1 jung of soil, dig to a depth of 1 jung, then 1 jung of empty space appears. The depth of this empty space can be calculated according to the amount of soil removed. If more soil is removed, that empty space appears relatively larger. If less soil is removed, then the volume of empty space is smaller. Now on the grasslands of Seda, there are many pikas. Each one desperately digging out underground burrows for themselves, for example, like marmots, many of them, and also some small birds also dig burrows. In the early days here, some people also dug because at that time many external conditions were quite difficult. They dug some underground spaces and then arranged things inside for dwelling. So at this time, does this space arise because of the soil that was removed, or does it exist because of the digging, or does it arise spontaneously without cause? Regarding that empty space just now, the question is, does it come from inside the soil that was just dug out, produced from within the soil, or from the digging? Here, digging means excavation, actively chiseling, whether hoeing soil or using whatever tools for digging. Now, there are excavators, but in the past there weren't these. People dug manually. With manual digging, does this empty space just now come from within the soil, or is it produced during the excavation? Excavation should refer to the entire action, the entire activity. Or is it produced without cause? The Buddha asks Ananda to distinguish. Now Ananda also says nothing. Anyway, however the Buddha speaks, he just stays there. That should be fine, sometimes criticizing him slightly. The Buddha says, Ananda, if this space arises spontaneously without cause, if you say this arises without cause, it doesn't need anything. Neither the digging just mentioned nor the soil, none of these are needed. If it arises without cause, then in that case, before the soil was dug, why wasn't it unobstructed? Before you dug and excavated, why wasn't it unobstructed? Why wasn't it unobstructed means how could empty space be obstructed? How could empty space not exist? Before you dug, why wasn't there empty space? Didn't we just say it was space, the empty space seen in the hole that was dug out? This empty space is not the empty space above ground, is not the empty space above ground. He says if you say it arises without cause when you hadn't dug, that 1 foot high empty space or 1 jung high empty space, why wasn't it there? You only see the solid earth with no passage through. We only see this earth, this piece of ground being dug, and no one has ever seen inside there 1 foot of empty space or 1 jung of empty space. No one has seen it, no passage through. No one has understood it, no one has seen it. So first, the explanation of arising without cause is unreasonable. If the second aspect, because during the process of digging soil just now, 1 foot of empty space was discovered inside, so if it's produced because of the soil, if it comes out because of soil, then when soil comes out, you should see space entering. If you say empty space is discovered during the process of digging soil, then this excavated soil has already come out. When it comes out, you should see this empty space beginning to enter. Just like when we finish class, this group goes down and that group comes in, it should enter. If the soil comes out first, at that time in the Shurangama Sutra Orthodox Pulse Commentary, here it says empty space must have characteristics to be able to enter. Otherwise, with just empty space, it's unclear how it enters. So when this soil comes out, if empty space has characteristics, then empty space with characteristics should enter and dwell in that hole. If the soil comes out first with no space entering, if we remove the soil, that 1 foot of soil is dug out, and then that empty space, if we don't discover it entering inside, if empty space with characteristics doesn't enter, how can you say this empty space? Then how can you say this empty space appears from the process of digging soil? This is unreasonable. If there's no entering or exiting, then space and soil should have no different causes. He says, if you don't discover empty space going in and coming back, such entering and exiting of empty space, then actually your empty space and soil, these two, are non-dual, without different causes. Without different causes means, didn't we just say this is produced from soil? If it's produced from soil, but apart from soil, you don't see empty space entering and exiting, then actually empty space is soil and soil is empty space. These two have already become non-dual without difference, without different causes. If they are without different causes, then if there are no different causes, nothing different in nature, then empty space is the same as soil. Then when soil comes out, why doesn't space come out? When this soil comes out, why doesn't empty space come out? How can it be that after soil comes out, it just stays there emptily inside? The Buddha's analysis is still quite interesting. The second analytical method, we also cannot say. When we usually debate, we can do it this way too. But I see some male and female students. You seem not to observe according to true reasoning, but just rely on your own imagination. Some are reasonable, some are unreasonable. This is the second analysis. Didn't we just have 3 aspects? If it comes out during the digging process, digging means excavation. We are actively digging. If it comes out because of digging, then the digging produces space. If it comes out during the excavation process, then this excavation dug out this space. For example, when we use a hoe to dig soil, we dig out empty space. When empty space is dug out, it should not be digging out soil. Then you're not digging out the soil, you're digging out empty space. If you're digging out empty space, soil shouldn't be dug out, should not be digging out soil. If it's not because of digging, then digging by itself produces soil. If not because of digging, if you say empty space doesn't come out because of digging, then digging by itself can dig out soil. In that case, how do you see space? If it's not dug out, then what's dug out is soil. Why is it that you still see space in that 1 foot deep hole? Actually, there's nothing to see in empty space, but actually we can still see the empty place. This is called seeing empty space. If you say it's not dug out, then how can you still have emptiness in that hole, able to see empty space? So this kind of reasoning method is still very meaningful. It might be a bit tiring when analyzing. For some people who haven't studied logic, it's a bit strenuous, but this should still open up some thinking for everyone. Observe this more carefully and examine it truthfully. You should more clearly and earnestly carefully observe. When observing, the digging comes from human hands moving in various directions. Soil is moved because of the ground. How does this empty space come out? When we analyze it further this way, we know that digging actually comes from human hands holding tools for excavation. At this time, soil appears. According to its direction, there are changes, shifting and turning. Then the soil that comes out moves over there. Originally, when we generally dig a hole, we dig the stuff inside to over there. You see now the road going to the Mani Jewel area. Aren't we currently repairing it? They put a pipe inside and then put things on top. In this way, the excavator digs out the original soil and places it there, so the middle becomes empty. In this way, generally we hold tools in our hands and dig out the soil from the original place, then pile it in another place. This is our method of excavation. How does this empty space come out? When we're digging soil, how do we dig out empty space? There's no way. It should have nothing to do with empty space. In that case, digging space, the substantial and insubstantial, cannot function together. They neither unite nor merge. So digging has substance, it's substantial. Space has no substance, it's illusory. So one is illusory, one is substantial. The functions of these two cannot complement each other. We just discussed this. Our digging, excavating activities, or that kind of substance and empty space, these two, one is something substantial, one is like a barren woman's son, fundamentally impossible to exist. Can these two unite as causes and conditions? There's no way. So they neither unite nor merge. Sometimes we speak of earth, water, fire, wind, and space. The precious garland says, through what causes and conditions do earth, water, fire, wind, and space arise? There are such discussions of causes and conditions. When discussing causes and conditions before examination, it's acceptable, but actually wind and space just now cannot unite, just like that. Now this empty space and soil, empty space and digging, the union of these two as causes and conditions is impossible. So why do we tell Shravakas that things arise through the union of causes and conditions? This is illusory, like dreams and illusions. That's acceptable. But when truly examining before Shravakas, how can there be union of causes and conditions? Look at the wind element and water element, earth element, fire element. If these four great elements unite as causes and conditions, and then sprouts appear, how do they unite? The essential natures of these three things are all different. Some are hot in nature, some are moist in nature. Moreover, for example, fire and water are completely contradictory substances. And space, something that doesn't exist at all, how can you unite it? So the so-called arising through union of causes and conditions doesn't exist. The reason is also like this. Why did the Buddha say before, neither from causes and conditions nor naturally? The reason he spoke is like this. So it's not union of causes and conditions. It cannot be that space arises from nothing on its own. Moreover, space doesn't arise from nothing. Arising from no cause is also impossible. No phenomenon can arise from no cause whatsoever. If this empty space, what exactly is this empty space? Oh, this empty space has a perfectly pervasive nature. Its nature is perfectly pervasive. It fundamentally doesn't move. It seems space sometimes exists and sometimes doesn't, but actually it has never moved. You should know that the present earth, water, fire, and wind are all called the five great elements. Why do we call space the great element space? In some commentaries, the reason space is called a great element is because it's pervasive and doesn't move. Its essence pervades everything and doesn't move. For this reason, it's called the great element space. Do the other earth, water, fire, and wind have this as well? These four, earth, water, fire, and wind. Do these four have this quality of not moving and being pervasive? Actually, this is also present. Why are they called the four great elements? Actually, the fire element, earth element, water element, and wind element, their essence also pervades all Dharma realms. They don't move, they pervade everything, so they're called the five great elements. Their true nature is perfectly interfused. All are the Tathagata Garbha, fundamentally without arising or ceasing. Actually, the great element space, fire element, water element, and so on, are perfectly interfused within the nature of the Tathagata Garbha. They are all fundamentally without arising or ceasing. This Shurangama Sutra seems to merge the three turnings of the Dharma wheel, the first, second, and third turnings together. The dependent origination of the first turning is also mentioned. Then the second turning, everything is emptiness, is also mentioned. Then the third turning, everything is the wondrous function and luminosity of the Tathagata Garbha. This is also mentioned. So these three are merged together to let us understand all at once the Buddha's ultimate intent. Then the Buddha says, Ananda, your mind is confused. Look, now the Buddha toward Ananda is getting increasingly. Your mind is confused. You don't realize that the four great elements are originally the Tathagata Garbha. Because you are too ignorant, you fundamentally don't know that the essence of the four great elements are originally the Tathagata Garbha, without separation or union. You should observe space. Is it entering or exiting, or is it neither entering nor exiting? You should look at space regarding space. Is it actually entering and exiting, or is it neither exiting nor entering? If it's exiting and entering, then it falls into the Shurangama Sutra finger palm commentary, and others explain this, conditioned phenomena. If space truly has exiting and entering, then it falls into conditioned phenomena. If space is neither exiting nor entering, unable to exit or enter, then it's in a state of natural phenomena. It falls into natural phenomena. So regarding so-called space, whether it has exiting and entering or not, regarding these, you know nothing at all. It's exiting and entering, its true nature. You now know nothing at all, completely nothing. In the Tathagata Garbha, below I'll tell you, in the Tathagata Garbha, the nature of awareness is true emptiness. Here the phrasing is somewhat different from the wind element and others before. Look, the nature of awareness is true emptiness. The nature of emptiness is true awareness. Pure by nature, it pervades the Dharma realm. According to beings' minds, it responds to their capacity for knowledge. Indeed, regarding space, each of us sentient beings may have different karmic power, so our judgment of space, cognition of space, and the benefits or harm space brings you are all completely different. Actually, space, in our world, everyone has such a spatial environment. But regarding this spatial environment, some say they created much karma depending on this space. Some, depending on this space, created much virtuous karma. Some brings happiness, some brings suffering. Everyone should understand this clearly. For example, in our building here, at night, if all the windows and doors are closed, if they're all closed, some people say it's better to let a bit of wind out so that oxygen from outside comes in. That's especially good. Some people say, absolutely don't open the windows, otherwise the wind from outside, the night wind, is toxic. If it enters your body, you'll definitely catch cold. You'll definitely get this or that. Some people say, it's best to close that. After closing it, the oxygen inside begins to accumulate. This is very good for your body. Others say, absolutely don't close it. There are all kinds of different explanations. So we think that so-called space, including the space inside our room, brings happiness and suffering that are indeed different. According to beings' karma, it's also different. So here he says, Ananda, just as one well's space creates one well, for example, didn't we just mention just Digging a well beside the city of Śrāvastī. When a well appears, actually this space also creates a well. This is a kind of space created by one person. Just like when one person makes a small house, actually this small house is a small space that manifests due to his karma. If you stay in a hotel or guest house, this is also your own small space manifesting due to karma. This space creates your present world. Empty space in the 10 directions is also like this. Actually, in the 10 directions, all empty space is also like this. Sometimes when I go to some ant hills, ant nests, I often think that inside these ant nests, through effort, ants create their small nests. But inside there's also a space. The rooms we humans make are the same. Why does Patrul Rinpoche say in the words of my perfect teacher that ancestors and so forth, those have all now become impermanent? What reliability do our ant nest-like dwellings have? It's the same. Sometimes now we all think, oh, we think the Dharma Realm Palace is really so magnificent, thinking like this. But actually it's just a big ant nest, just a small space created by ants. This is a kind of our virtuous karma. This should count as virtuous karma. Here we all studied together much profound Mahayana Dharma, but this is a space we collectively created. Empty space in the 10 directions is completely like this. Pervading the 10 directions, how could there be particular locations? How could it be that these 10 directions have fixed or definite locations? This is acceptable, that is not acceptable. It's not like that. As long as your karma manifests, it's all acceptable. It appears according to karma. So our space, indeed anywhere, I feel everyone has their own space. In the future, whether leaving or not leaving, before us, space is everywhere. Whether it brings you happiness or suffering has a certain relationship with your karma. Some people say, what will I do after leaving? Where will I go? I have no place to go. Actually, you can make the 4 directions your home. Wherever you go, this space exists, because as long as I have karma, it all exists. So it appears according to karma, our space appears according to karma. Worldly people are ignorant because they're confused about what? Either arising from causes and conditions or arising naturally. These are all mental discriminations and conceptual constructions. Mere words and expressions are all without real meaning. These are all conjectures of our discriminating minds. Actually, they're all not real. As long as there are words and expressions, as long as there's discrimination, this is not the ultimate reality. So our analysis of the 4 great elements this time gives us unprecedented recognition of the entire cosmic world and the entire Tathagata Garbha, combined with the various karmic perceptions of sentient beings manifesting within the Tathagata Garbha. We should have unprecedented understanding. Although this doesn't count as tantric pith instructions, the analytical methods here allow us in the entire world to further develop confidence and certainty in the Buddha's profound teachings. We'll conclude this discussion here.
Bandara Banma Sadar